Welcome back to another Wordy Wednesday. As you can see from the tail, Audie has forgiven me for tripping over him a couple of days ago. Took him a while to get past it. He did not like being tripped on. It was very alarming. But I realized he had gotten past it when I found him sleeping in exactly the same spot today. So apparently he now believes that I will pick up my feet and step over a little cat. All right, today I thought we would talk about idioms. We got a request for that, so let's go with it. And today we're going to start off with colorful idioms when we come back. Well, when we speak of colorful idioms, at least today, I'm talking about literally colorful idioms, idioms that involve the concept of color, the words of color. And I thought we would start with blue moon. Once in a blue moon is an expression that means it's a very rare event. Now, today, we know a blue moon as the second full moon in any calendar month. And since there are approximately 13 full moons in a calendar year, that means it's basically a once-a-year event. So it fits the category of a very rare event. But it sort of begs the question, where did we come up with the concept of blue moon in the first place? Well, the earliest recorded instance of the use of blue moon was in a paper that has been attributed to Cardinal Wolsey. This is in the early 1500s, so we're going back to the 16th century. And the expression, and it was just a little one-line throwaway, so it's hard to interpret, seems to have been nothing more than a nonsensical utterance by somebody who was probably first cousin to a village idiot, that the moon is blue. And common sense would tell us that that was probably seen as a ridiculous statement. But was it? No. There are a lot of atmospheric conditions that produce blue moons. And they say, in fact, that the eruption of Krakatoa, that was in 1883, and most of us in my generation remember Krakatoa as the title of a movie, Krakatoa, east of Java. Well, only if you're being flown there by Wrong Way Corrigan, because Krakatoa is in fact west of Java. Quick digression for those of you who are not aviation buffs. Wrong Way Corrigan was an American pilot who is famous for making a transatlantic flight allegedly going the wrong way. He had flown from California to New York, wanted to get permission to go from New York to Ireland, but he was denied. This was in the 1930s when solo transatlantic flight was quite a big deal. So he filed a flight plan to go back to California, got in his plane and landed in Ireland, and swore to his dying day nothing but a navigational error, which is hard to swallow because, among other things, he was one of the mechanics on Charles Lindbergh's plane, the Spirit of St. Louis. So the guy knew aviation, and of course he had the skill to successfully traverse the Atlantic by himself, in some little plane that he had modified himself for the trip. But yeah, so there's my wrong way Corrigan digression. But yeah, Java is in fact to the east of Krakatoa, not the other way around. No, did I get that right? Yes, Krakatoa is west of Java. Java is to the east of Krakatoa. Major volcanic event, 1883. They say it's one of the biggest in recorded history, perhaps even the biggest. And the particulate matter in the atmosphere turned all the moons, whether full or otherwise, into blue moons for about 2 years. And that was just the optical illusion of looking through the cloudy, smoky atmosphere at the moon. It seemed blue. And we know this is not uncommon today because the forest fires, particularly in the north, in Scandinavia and Canada, forest fires will give the moon a bluish appearance. So how did we get from here to there? I mean, this is not all digression. There is a loop here, but it's a circuitous one. So there was an almanac. It was called the Maine Almanac that was published in the United States in the 1800s. And they gave names to all of the moons, all of the full moons. So it would have been, the harvest moon and the Easter moon and the blue moon. Well, when the almanacs were being reinterpreted in the 20th century, they were misinterpreted. Frankly, it was a mistake. And the person misinterpreting the almanacs and publishing the information erroneously thought that the moon that was being referred to as a blue moon in those almanacs was the second full moon of a calendar month. In fact, that was not true. It was something else altogether different. So to make a long story short, blue moon is a mistaken interpretation. There really is such a thing, but regardless, it's a very rare event, and so rare that, it was considered ludicrous when it was first penned in the 16th century. And today, for us, it means a very rare occurrence, once in a blue moon. So there you go. Red. There are a lot of red ones. So let's start with red herring. Well, a red herring is a distraction. It's a false clue, a false lead. So, Inspector Poirot is investigating a case, and he says, yes, the killer was a 6'7" big man. And the police officer says, but we found a tiny little woman's glove. And Poirot says, yes, but the cousin of the brother-in-law who had a neighbor had a little daughter over visiting, lost a glove, and the killer left it as a red herring to throw us off the scent. So where does that come from? Well, originally, and there was also a misinterpretation of this, it was thought that the term red herring came from the notion of using a red herring, and there really is no red herring. It was like a particularly smelly kipper, to teach young hunting dogs to follow a trail. So they drag this horribly smelly fish along the trail, and the dog would pick up the scent, and eventually they'd hone their skills. Turns out that's not where it really came from. What they did was used carcasses, like a dead creature of some sort, disgusting, but to train hunting horses to be able to stay with the hunting party. And so they trained the horses to smell the icky smells, and apparently at some point switched over from gross dead animals to smelly fish. And that became what they would follow. So when you drop a red herring in someone's path, it's a false clue to lead them in a different direction. Red-handed. This is one we've all used. This one apparently goes back to 16th century UK, again, this time Scotland. And it was in Scottish law, the actual legal text had said if someone was caught with red hands, in other words, blood on their hands, they were caught in the act. And it was memorialized in their legal record, red-handed, quite literally. So what red-handed means is hands red from blood. I find the Scottish connection really interesting because when I think of blood on someone's hand, the first thing that comes to my mind is Macbeth, out, damn spot, or as they would say, damned spot, to get this imaginary blood off his hands or figurative blood off his hands. And Macbeth, we got another digression coming here. I'm not sure where my mind is going today, but it's definitely corkscrewing. Macbeth, just as a little bit of trivia, actors do not say the name of Macbeth. Theater people in general don't. It's considered bad luck. They trace this back to a notion that the play was cursed. And there are a lot of apocryphal stories around that, including the fact that, the apocryphal fact that the actor playing Lady Macbeth in the original production died suddenly, and Shakespeare took that part in the first performance of Macbeth. And that productions of Macbeth are notoriously liable to problems. The fact is that in 1849 in New York, there were riots that resulted in 20 deaths. This was not like something small, because there was a squabble between two theatrical companies in New York at the time who were performing competing versions of Macbeth. So who knows? Maybe there really is something to it after all. Anyway, so there is red-handed and a digression about Scottish blood on your hands. Yes, I've got you. Red for Republican states, blue for Democratic states. This is another modern idiom involving colors. Red states, blue states. Well, that is 21st century. This is new. Historically, red and blue have been reversed at will. More often than not, Democrats were referred to as red and Republicans referred to as blue. It became standardized with televised election results, but not right away. 70 years ago, when they were first televising election results, they just chose colors pretty much willy-nilly. So one election would show the Democrats in blue and the Republicans in red, whereas the next 4 years later, the next election would show the Republicans as red and the Democrats as blue. There was no rhyme or reason to it at all. Modern innovation, 21st century, and it was the 2004 elections that really standardized that. It's unusual because when we say red in a political context, in general, we are referring to a left-leaning political ideology. And this comes from the communist use of the word red. For them, it represents the blood of the struggling workers. And, if you've ever seen the battleship Potemkin, you know that no one gets emotional over politics the way a Russian does. And they adopted the convention of red. We who are from non-communist countries did not label them. That was their own label. They were red people. So I find it very interesting that throughout the rest of the world, red is seen as left-leaning, whereas in the U.S., red is seen as right-leaning. But again, brand new, 2004. Oh, left and right. While we're on that, why would we consider liberals left and conservatives right? This goes back to the French Revolution. In the French Revolution, in their parliament, I'm going to call it parliament. I'm not sure what they called it. I don't know if they're sure what they called it. The provisional revolutionary government consisting of cutting people's heads off. The conservatives sat to the right of the chairman and the liberals sat to the left. That's how we get the left-right notion politically. Digression, but like I say, today we're just full of them. Green with envy. How about this one? This one we get from Shakespeare. Shakespeare in Othello described jealousy as a green-eyed monster, a very famous line that we're all familiar with, the green-eyed monster. And green with envy comes straight from Shakespeare. We barely modified it. We just are no longer saying that green-eyed people are naturally jealous. And as a green-eyed person, I'm very grateful for that one. All right, this one, tickled pink. That comes from the color of your face when you laugh. So if you tickle someone, their face gets red when they're laughing, or pink. First actually penned in 1922, tickled pink. But the concept of pink with laughter or pink with glee was around for a good 100 years before then. The concept dates back to the early 1800s. So there's tickled pink. It means that you're so thrilled you're laughing and your face is turning red. White lie. This one goes back to 1741. One of those English magazines that Jane Austen was always referring to when she was like, oh, the Spectator and this and that. One of them, and I think this was the Gentleman's magazine, had written an article about a white lie that a lady, like a respectable lady, could tell a white lie, just a little tiny fib, no big deal. The concept goes much farther back than this, but the idea that white was associated with innocence and purity very far back. That's early Christianity. However, white lie came out 1741, and it was specifically a little tiny harmless lie that just smoothed over social awkwardness when the truth really didn't matter and was likely to be more hurtful than necessary. Blackballed. For us, the expression someone was blackballed means that someone put a bad word in for someone. It comes from the 18th century and English gentlemen's clubs, when ordinarily to be admitted to one of these clubs, you had to have the unanimous consent of all of the members, and they would have balls, literally little balls like little marbles. One would be black, one would be white, and you would go to a box and drop your ball in. No one could see it because it was in your hand, but everyone could hear it, knowing that you had dropped a ball, so they knew you voted, and that you only dropped one ball because you could clearly hear the difference of the sound of one ball or more than one ball being dropped. So it kept the voting very much on the up and up, but also kept it very secret. One black ball meant you were out. So It goes back to the concept of unanimous consent in gentlemen's clubs, where you were out if one person blackballed you. Now we tend to use it in a more casual sense. You know, to say that someone was blackballed meant that um, that someone has put a bad word in for them. Oh, and generally it means we don't know who it was, because remember, this was secret voting. Um, ooh, Scarlet Woman. So again, we're back to red. This one goes back to the early 19th century. In the early 19th century, the concept of the Whore of Babylon from the book of Revelation, and that was the woman riding the beast clothed in scarlet and purple robes, hence Scarlet Woman. With a lot of Protestant churches, the Whore of Babylon was equated with the Roman Catholic Church, and that was the original concept. The Scarlet Woman was not like a literal whore, a prostitute on the streets, but was in fact the Catholic Church. Later, of course, socially we progressed past the point of insulting people's religions like that, and Scarlet Woman came to be a euphemism for prostitute, again, going back to the Whore of Babylon, the book of Revelation. So, what do we think of these colorful idioms? What I find interesting is the way our minds associate. After you hear these things, we associate a lot of negativity with red, with green, with black, a lot of positivity with white and pink. That in some ways, I think these expressions start to alter our perceptions of the emotional qualities we associate with these different colors. So let me know. This was our colorful idioms. Let me know. Do you like idioms? Do you want more? Do you like the history of them? Because personally, I find that utterly fascinating. Not the blue moon thing. I actually had to read through the entire history of the mistranslation of the main almanac, which is enough to have your eyes glazing over, because it was so bizarre and circuitous. And right now, I can tell you absolutely, even though I've read it, I really don't know what those almanac writers were thinking of when they were referring to Blue Moon, although I know what we're thinking of when we refer to it. All right. Listen, have a terrific day. I will see all of my Wordy folks tomorrow evening, because Thursday at 8 p.m., that's when we are going to finish off Persuasion, our Jane Austen novel, and we are going to start on Confederacy of Dunces, which, as I say, is the funniest novel you never read. Okay, we'll see y'all later. Have a great day.